Astronauts to the moon.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaron from Jeranism, back with another video for you today. Are we spinning? Should be a short video, as the answer is clearly no, we are not. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed the video. This has been Jeranism. Till next time. No, okay. Maybe we need to go into a bit more detail here, but let's make sure that we all agree that no one has ever felt these ridiculous speeds. It is assumed and presupposed and taught to children as fact. Even though, has anyone ever felt the 1,000 miles per hour that we are said to be traveling at the equator? No. Has anyone ever felt the 66,000 miles per hour we are flying around the sun? No. How about the 480,000 miles per hour that we're traveling with the sun around the Milky Way galaxy? No. What about the 1.3 million miles per hour that we travel with the Milky Way galaxy around the Great Attractor? No. In fact, they could change it to 91.5 billion miles per hour, and would anyone feel a thing? No. And as crazy as those numbers even sound, we are told that the closest star to us is some 25 trillion miles away. No. These are just numbers and just math needed to show that we are in an ever-expanding, limitless universe, flying around at ridiculous speeds, but none of us has ever felt a thing. Now, before we get too deep, let me say, as I always do not trust me. To do your own research, this video is my opinion. I want to show some reasons why I think there is no way that we are spinning, but people are free to their own beliefs, and they need to make up their own minds. You are free to believe what you're taught. You're free to believe that you are spinning on a space rock in the vacuum of space around a sun that is just one of over 100 sextillion stars. You can believe that if you want. Or you're free to open your mind and to question what you're taught. The only problem is, if you question it, you face the criticism and the name-calling. To fit in with society, you better accept what you were taught, or else you'll be labeled and shamed. I thought Andrew Says explained it well in his recent video called The Rise of Flat Earth Creationism. Let's listen.
The label and shame tactic. It's something we've seen frequently in the media. It's what spawned belief in the Jussie Smollett hoax. If you're a flat earther, you won't be called a racist or white supremacist. You'll simply be thought of as a silly moron. The use of the shaming tactic, though, is quite clearly to prevent discussion, covering up an inability to intellectually debate, or trying to affect your opponent monetarily. A fast track to victory of sorts. Is this true for those who mock flat earthers? What the flat earth model leads to, and what many say the ridicule is meant to hide, is that a firmament, or a dome, would completely ruin hundreds of years worth of indoctrination and propaganda. NASA and the space program, space in its entirety, would all be a big charade. Movies, science, school curriculums, all methods of indoctrination to keep this spinning lie alive.
From the air age, through the missile age, and into the age of space. Our space age heritage of knowledge is older than a decade, older than a century, older than a millennium. Our scientific knowledge has evolved through the ages concurrently with the minds of men. Our capacity to learn has expanded in the process.
And so, opening one's mind comes with the labels, and then the shame, and it's all by design. While if you accept the religion of space, well, this gets you opportunities, and an easy way to fit in and to seem smart. It's gravity, you fool. You ever heard of Newton's laws of motion? So, even questioning whether you are spinning right now or whether you are flying about the universe at 1.3 million miles per hour comes with some backlash. However, I'm questioning it, so get over it. Now, we're about to talk a little bit about math, and so I hope people understand that despite what you might hear elsewhere, math is not reality. Math is a human creation, and while it may describe reality, it cannot prove it. Why? Well, because we invented it. If the foundations are wrong or the axioms are off, then it can appear to be reality, but it is nowhere close. Math is math, not science. Let's listen to Vsauce discuss it from his video, How to Count Past Infinity.
This is math, not science. The things we assume to be true in math are called axioms. And an axiom we come up with isn't more likely to be true if it better explains or predicts what we observe. Instead, it's true because we say it is.
Ah, it's true because we say it is. Well, good thing we can never fall victim to being fooled through math. Oh wait, it's actually a perfect way to be fooled.
Its consequences just become what we observe. We are not fitting our theories to some physical universe whose behavior and underlying laws would be the same whether we were here or not. We are creating this universe ourselves.
Yes, with just math, you can create whatever you want. A physicist has said before that one can create an equation that says an elephant can hang from a cliff holding on to a branch only. And while math may say this is possible, reality knows better.
If the axioms we declare to be true lead us to contradictions or paradoxes, we can go back and tweak them or just abandon them altogether, or we can just refuse to allow ourselves to do the things that cause the paradoxes. That's it. What's fascinating, though, is that in making sure the axioms we accept don't lead to problems, we've made math into something that is, as the saying goes, unreasonably effective in the natural sciences. So to what extent we're inventing all of this, or discovering it, it's hard to say.
Very hard to say. But one thing we can certainly not say is math is reality. Let's remember that as we cover some of this math. Okay, so are we spinning? First, whenever we're discussing this topic, many people will want to use angular speed. Why? Well, because the angular speed is the same no matter where you might be on Earth, while linear speed is simply distance over time. So we can make this simple with this simple circle animation. Consider first this circle is a merry-go-round with a circumference of 100 feet. Now clearly, to anyone who can just think at all, the blue dot, and we can pretend these are horses since this is a merry-go-round, the blue horse moves faster over a given time. The green horse moves the slowest because of the equation distance over time. The blue horse is going around 100 feet in, say, 4 seconds, but the green horse, which has a much smaller circumference, is going only 10 feet in that same 4 seconds. But if we use angular speed, well then both the green horse and the blue horse have the same angular speed, but very different linear speeds. The blue horse is going 25 feet per second, and the green horse is going 2.5 feet per second, 10 times less. This makes sense. Someone at the center of the merry-go-round will definitely feel a different speed than someone at the edge. However, if we use angular speed, as most globe proponents will want to do, then the speed of the horses is all the same. They're all moving the same angular speed. The blue horse on the outer edge and the green horse towards the middle. So it makes sense why they want to use radians and talk about angular velocity, because they would be the same. But we know someone at the outer edge of the merry-go-round would always move faster than someone near the middle. Here we have an article from phizlink.com that asks, if I'm on a merry-go-round with a friend and the friend is closer to the center than I am, are they going faster than I am? And the answer is no. You're going faster. The merry-go-round is rotating with uniform circular motion. That means that it rotates at a constant angular speed. They then go through a little bit of the math, which again shows that if you mean linear speed, then someone at the outer edge moves fastest. But since you're both circling with uniform circular motion, you are both moving the same angular speed. But again, the closer you are to the middle, the slower your linear speed is. The next little trick that globe believers use is to say, well, yes, we are spinning 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, but we're only going around once per day. No one could ever feel that. Well, in a sense, they're most certainly correct. On our merry-go-round here, if the blue dot moved around at, say, 1 rotation per day, you wouldn't even know it was moving. It would be so slow. But here's the trick. Remember, this merry-go-round is only 100 feet in circumference. So let's extend that to, say, a mile. So now the merry-go-round goes around 1 mile per day. Now, would the blue horse know that it was moving? Well, just barely. Not quite like grass growing, but if you looked out, you would be able to tell that you were moving. But it would be very, very slow. You'd be moving at about 1/25th of a mile per hour. But to see if we'd notice flying 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, we'd have to take that small speed we were just talking about, that 1 mile per day, and multiply it by 25,000. Think of anything moving at any noticeable speed, and then think times 25,000. It's ridiculous. Think of seeing a car drive by at 30 miles per hour. Okay, well, 25,000 times that is 750,000 miles per hour. Ridiculous. So think of a car going 1 mile per hour. Now times 25,000, that's 25,000 miles per hour. So I hope you can see how insane it is to multiply any speed by 25,000. But that's what we need to do to compare it to the speed that we're moving on the Earth. That merry-go-round at 1 rotation per day, which is 1 mile per day, needs to be multiplied by 25,000. The speed would send anyone flying off the Earth without a doubt. Let's get back to our example and how it compares to Earth. But my hope is that you realize why I think angular velocity is just not needed here and why globe believers will jump to use it. They want to use angular speed because they want to say that both the blue dot or the gray dot, the red dot, and even the green dot are all going the same speed. Angular speed lets them do that. Linear speed does not. So linear speed says that the horse on the outside has the greatest linear speed because obviously it has a greater radius. And angular speed says the speed of all the horses is the same because they all make one revolution in the same time. Okay, moving on to a globe Earth. Since we know linear speed is simply distance over time, we can easily figure out the linear speed for any location on a globe Earth. The circumference of their latitude, which would be d, over time of rotation 24 hours, which would be t. So at the equator, we have a circumference of 24,901 miles. We divide that by 24, and we get its linear speed of 1,037 miles per hour. For Los Angeles, we get a circumference at that latitude of 20,670 miles. Divide that by 24, and we get a linear speed of 861 miles per hour. For Anchorage, Alaska, a circumference at that latitude is 12,000 miles. Divide by 24, and we get 500 miles per hour. Move to the tip of Greenland, circumference of 2,771 miles. Divide that by 24, we get 115 miles per hour. And at just outside the North Pole, a circumference of 86 miles. Divide that by 24, and we get about 3.5 miles per hour. And again, with linear speed, this is very easy, right? The equator, 24,901 divided by 24 is 1037. Alaska, 12,000 miles circumference, 24 hours equals 500 miles per hour. Very easy. But now let's look at angular speed. So the equation for angular speed is velocity equals the angular speed times the radius. So 1037 miles per hour equals the angular speed times the radius, 3959. So the angular speed equals 0.26 radians per hour. So now let's look at the angular speed of Alaska. Again, V equals WR, so that's 500 miles per hour equals W times the radius of 1910. So W equals 0.26 radians per hour. So now you can see that the math is what allows it. The equation for angular speed, no matter where you choose on Earth, is always 0.26 radians per hour. And if you see here, if you go to this site, this little conversion tool, and put in 0.26 radians per hour, what does that equal? Well, it equals 0.999 rotations or revolutions per day. So now you can see how they always want to discuss this topic with angular speed, because linear speed exposes the nonsense. Because angular speed says that all horses anywhere on a merry-go-round are all moving the same speed. And get this, that's no matter how big the merry-go-round is. That's crazy talk. Think if a merry-go-round was 1 million miles in circumference. To think that all the horses on the merry-go-round would move at equal speed is kind of loony. Imagine being on an inner horse, then be taken to an outer horse near the edge. Wow. And so, they want us to think that no matter where you are on a merry-go-round, it would always feel the same. That's truly insanity. The difference in speed would be clearly measurable, and yet it's not. It's all mathematics again. We already heard Vsauce tell us that math is not science because we invented it. In math, we decide what's true. Numbers are not even things. They aren't concrete. They are not even nouns. They are adjectives that describe things. No different than colors, really. You cannot show me green any more than you can show me 5. You can show me a green car, green being the adjective there, and you can show me 5 apples, which is just an adjective and a way of describing a set of apples. But math is just a human invention, and much like the elephant earlier, math can be manipulated in so many ways to show us something is true. Because, well, we say it is. Here's a quote by Nikola Tesla talking about the reality of mathematical equations. He said, and I quote, "The scientists from Franklin to Morse were clear thinkers and did not produce erroneous theories. The scientists of today think deeply instead of clearly. One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane. Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality." Nikola Tesla. That was from his Radio Power Will Revolutionize the World, July 1934 article in Modern Mechanics and Inventions. We can simply look at centrifugal versus centripetal force to see another glaring example, and we can find more of the quote-unquote tricks of the trade. Centrifugal force is the moving or tending to move away from the center, versus centripetal force, which is the moving or tending to move towards a center. If you forget which is which, like I did for a while, an easy way to remember is to think of the F and the P. When I see the F, I think of flying off or flying away, and when I see the P, I think of pulling towards the center. So maybe that will help you a little as well. Now watch the trick here. The formula for centrifugal force is the centrifugal force equals the mass times the velocity squared over the radius. And the answer is in newtons. And the formula for the centripetal force is force equals mass times the velocity squared over the radius. And the answer is in newtons. Wait, aren't they the same? One for the force flying out and away, and then the other is the force pulling inward? Then you might see that in the general theory of relativity, that it just so happens that gravity and the centrifugal force are equivalent. In order for something to stay still while on a spinning platform like a merry-go-round, they say that all the forces need to add up to a zero vector. Well, to do that, you need the fly-away force to equal the pulling-in force. So when you include our weight, which they say is because of gravity, then you can start to see the mathematical tricks involved. Your senses go right out the window. Really, Jaron, doesn't science require our sense of observation and depend on our senses? Nope, not even close. Let's let Neil deGrasse Tyson tell us so we are all clear here about science and our senses.
Yeah, that's so what you learn when you study science in general, but astrophysics especially, that you no longer invoke your senses to judge what makes sense, or you no longer invoke your personal philosophies to judge what should be true. The universe is what it is, and it really doesn't care about your senses. Yeah.
Oh, okay, Neil. We are no longer to use our senses to judge what makes sense. The universe is what it is and doesn't care about your senses. And we can start to see why. Because they have built the universe mathematically, and only those skilled in those equations that have been made up are equipped to explain the world. How the universe they built using the math they constructed works. No deception can possibly work there. Because if you begin to invoke our own senses and to question what they have built, scary things begin to happen as the world they built begins to show signs of being a worldview, a religion masked by mathematical fact. We've all been had, ladies and gentlemen. Our senses can just watch the infamous spinning merry-go-round of death or the gravitron and see that when spinning, you will fly off the merry-go-round, and if there's no padded walls in the gravitron, well, you'd fly off that as well. We can read this article about the spinning merry-go-round of death, and this guy uses math to show why the man flew off while only going at a linear velocity of 16 miles per hour. He even tells us here why it's a fake force. The actual acceleration, he tells us, is towards the middle. Again, to stay on, we need balanced forces, which the Earth of course has, we're told. He says in his article in regards to fake forces, and this is where the fake force comes in. Fake forces are not interactions between two objects. Instead, they are make-believe forces that we need in order to make objects in an accelerating frame behave as though they were in a non-accelerating frame. Fake forces let us use Newtonian mechanics in a place where it doesn't really work. He says, everyone has experienced these fake forces. Here you are in a moving car, the car turns to the left, and what happens? You get pushed to the right side of the car. Now what force was it that pushed you? Or better yet, what object interacted with you? Surprise, there was no object pushing you that way. You want to say there is a force, even though there isn't one. This is the essence of the fake force. And yet, everything flies towards the outside. If a car was turning in a constant circle, you'd be pushed towards the outside. When the spinning merry-go-round of death is going around, the person flies off to the outside. We see it every day, everywhere. But here's a place where, again, because of Newton's description of what a force actually is, it changes the reality. So now you have to believe that we are being pulled towards the center. They actually teach this to children. Check out this site and let me read to you how they explain this one, and we can all laugh at it together, and hopefully you can start to see why I say there's no possible way that we're spinning. So the site is called the Physics Classroom. This is, I guess, for children. It starts out talking about acceleration, then gives the geometric proof of inward acceleration. But we're going to go down a little bit further here so we can see an experiment or a test. So let me read you this from Direction of the Acceleration Vector. It says, objects moving in circles at constant speed accelerate towards the center of the circle. The acceleration of an object is often measured using a device known as an accelerometer. A simple accelerometer consists of an object immersed in a fluid such as water. Consider a sealed jar that is filled with water. A cork attached to the lid by a string can serve as an accelerometer. To test the direction of acceleration for an object moving in a circle, the jar can be inverted and attached to the end of a short section of a wooden 2x4. A second accelerometer constructed in the same manner can be attached to the opposite end of the 2x4. If the 2x4 and accelerometers are clamped to a rotating platform and spun in a circle, the direction of the acceleration can be clearly seen by the direction of the lean of the corks. As the cork-water combination spins in a circle, the cork leans towards the center of a circle. The least massive of the two objects always leans in the direction of the acceleration. In the case of the cork and the water, the cork is less massive on a per milliliter basis, and thus it experiences the greater acceleration. Having less inertia, owing to its smaller mass on a per milliliter basis, the cork resists the acceleration the least and thus leans to the inside of the jar towards the center of the circle. This is the observable evidence that an object moving in a circular motion at constant speed experiences an acceleration that is directed towards the center of the circle. This is complete nonsense. The water is being pushed to the outside, just like in the gravitron, just like in the merry-go-round of death, just like in any merry-go-round, just like in anything spinning. The water is flying towards the outside, which is pushing the lighter cork towards the middle. This here actually says, the cork of the water accelerometer points inward towards the center of the circle when placed upon this rotating platform, thus indicating an inward acceleration for circular motion. Wow. Let's read a little bit further here. It says another simple homemade accelerometer involves a lit candle centered vertically in the middle of an open-air glass. If the glass is held level and at rest, such as there is no acceleration, then the candle flame extends in an upward direction. Okay, correct. However, if you hold the glass candle system with an outstretched arm and spin in a circle at a constant rate, such that the flame experiences an acceleration, then the candle flame will no longer extend vertically upwards. Instead, the flame deflects from its upright position. This signifies that there is an acceleration when the flame moves in a circular at a constant speed. No, again, the flame is being pushed towards you because the heavier air is being pushed out. Complete and total nonsense. Look down here, it says, thus far we have seen a geometric proof and two real-world demonstrations of this inward acceleration. At this point, it becomes the decision of the student to believe or not to believe. What? So it's up to the student. And then look over here, there's a happy little student, and she says, I believe in physics. This is classic, folks. Think about what they're saying here, that when something is on a spinning platform, that it's being accelerated towards the middle, and the evidence they give is this rotating platform, which clearly shows that the water is being pushed to the outside. Think if you had two half-full milk gallons, okay, in each hand, and you outstretched your arms and started spinning. The milk would not fly towards you in the middle. It would fly towards the outer edges of the carton. However, according to this, the fact that the air in the bottle would come towards you proves inward acceleration. Give me a break. I mean, the experiment they show is simply laughable at best. Of course, if you spin this turntable, the cork goes towards the middle. It is less dense than the water which is being flung to the outside. All you need to know to see this deception is how a centrifuge works. When you spin a centrifuge, the heaviest items, the items that are more dense, fly out, and the less dense items come in. Not because there's an inward force, no. So this is for the Wikipedia from centrifuge, and it says, a centrifuge is a piece of equipment that puts an object in rotation around a fixed axis. In parentheses, spins it in a circle. Okay, so far we're on the right page. Applying a force perpendicular to the axis of spin outward that can be very strong. The centrifuge works using the sedimentation principle, where the centrifugal acceleration causes denser substances and particles to move outward in the radial direction. At the same time, objects that are less dense are displaced and moved towards the center. So again, do you see what they're doing here? They just described that exact action, but said that it's actually causing a force. The cork, which is less dense than the water in the accelerometer, is coming towards the middle. No, it's because the heavier items are flying towards the outside. Now, they can't tell you that. Why not? Because you're going to start to question, how am I spinning on a spinning sphere? How am I not flying towards the outside? All the heavy items in a centrifuge, in a merry-go-round of death, in a gravitron, all those items are pushing the heavier and most dense items to the outside. But on the Earth, it's the opposite. All the heavy items are pulled towards the inside, and the gases and the atmosphere is being pushed to the outside. It makes no sense. The heavier items get pushed to the outside in a centrifuge, which would be me, you, rocks, water. Those things would be flying towards the outside, and the lighter things, like the cork, or in this case, the atmosphere, would be pulled to the inside. It truly becomes more and more insane the further you go. If we go to Cool Cosmos and ask why don't we feel the Earth move, it states that the Earth spins very fast, but we don't feel the motion because it's constant. Okay? It says the spinning and orbital speeds stay the same, so we don't feel any acceleration or deceleration. You can only feel motion if your speed changes. Anyone ever been on the gravitron? Did you feel anything at a constant orbital speed? Of course you did. You were flying to the outside. Let's go to Earth's sky. We asked the same question, and we are reminded of one little thing that we forgot to discuss in our merry-go-round example. It says we don't feel the motion because you and everything else, including the oceans and the atmosphere, are all spinning with the Earth at the same constant speed. Do you see the nonsense yet? Now the atmosphere is spinning with the Earth. At Alaska, it spins at 500 miles per hour. It spins at 1,037 miles per hour at the equator and 860 miles per hour in Los Angeles. Wow, what an amazing atmosphere indeed. But clouds and winds can move around with no problem while the entire atmosphere is magically attached to the spinning Earth at speeds faster than the speed of sound? It's simply ridiculous. To go even further with the deception, they now turn to the airplane example. If you were traveling on a plane, you don't feel it. You don't feel you're moving. Yeah, because the plane has a roof. What if we removed the top of the plane? Would you notice then? Of course you would. You would be dead. The article goes on to say, bottom line is that we don't feel the Earth rotate because Earth spins steadily and moves at a constant rate in orbit around the sun, carrying you as a passenger with it. So where is the top of our plane? To believe that the atmosphere just spins freely, always knowing what speed to spin, is simply insanity. And again, even if we did have a roof, all the things that are the heaviest would be pushed to the outside of that roof, not to the inside, not towards the spinning ball Earth. If you look here, this is a video of me traveling with cruise control for 1 mile at 50 miles per hour. So let's pretend that we are on a merry-go-round at a spot where we spin at a linear speed of 50 miles per hour. Okay, it's pretty fast. But now imagine that we take a plane or travel to the equator. Are you ready to see what 1,000 miles per hour looks like? Here we go. Imagine that we are at the outside edge of a merry-go-round traveling 25,000 miles in a day, which equals 1,000 miles per hour. Well, here is that ridiculous speed. I mean, we'd be flung off in 2 seconds, and imagine if I had a trough of water with me. It would be completely gone. Now you have to imagine that the atmosphere is moving along with it at this speed. How? This is ridiculous, and clearly we would feel this edge linear velocity. But by making the Earth a giant sphere, saying it exists in a vacuum with an attached atmosphere that spins in concert with the ground below it, perfectly at the same speed as the ground, is patently absurd. That we wouldn't feel this speed or be able to detect it with our precise measuring devices is simply insanity. Again, all of this is just my opinion, and as I've said, you are free to believe the math that says it's possible, just as you can believe that the elephant can hang from the tree branch off the cliff. Be my guest. Believe you are spinning as we speak, floating along in outer space at such a perfect consistency that can't be felt, and it no longer even matters what speeds or equations they invent. We'd never feel it. They could tell you that you're flying through space at 89 trillion miles per hour. You can't tell. You're traveling in a plane and simply can't tell. Let's discuss for a second the atmosphere spinning with the Earth. So imagine if you stand here with this column of air above you, that as you travel, the air moves exactly with you. Where would this end? If space is above you and the atmosphere thins with altitude, where does it stop spinning with you? If you sent a balloon up, eventually wouldn't the Earth spin out from below you? Well, we know this doesn't happen. If a helicopter were to hover above the ground, is it gravity that carries the helicopter along with it at 1,000 miles per hour as it hovers? Well, inertia, they might proclaim. Yes, because this way it's very easy to say, of course we don't know we're spinning, because we always have been and always will be. We and the atmosphere and the helicopter all have inertia. It's absolute crazy talk. It's a religion. It's simply a belief. The other answer that they have is the almighty gravity. This is the answer to all the globe issues. Good old gravity, the weakest force holding everything on Earth to the ball as it spins and flies through space, holding the atmosphere, holding the oceans, the hills, the lakes, the rocks, the hovering helicopter, and the airplane being carried backward as it flies west. All of it controlled by action at a distance. But Jaron, the math works. We have Newton's mathematical equations for gravity. He wrote tons of books and gave us the formulas. Really? Well, I wonder what Newton had to say about his gravity equation and how it relates to reality. Here's Newton in his own words in a letter to Bentley telling us what he felt about gravity, or this action at a distance. He said, quote, "It is inconceivable that inanimate brute matter should, without the mediation of something else which is not material, operate upon and affect other matter without mutual contact, as it must do if gravitation, in the sense of Epicurus, be essential and inherent in it. And this is one reason why I desired you would not ascribe innate gravity to me, that gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without the mediation of something else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to the other, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. Gravity must be caused by an agent acting constantly according to certain laws, but whether this agent be material or immaterial, I have left that to the consideration of my readers. He didn't even want to have his name attached to the ridiculous notion that were his mathematical equations, but today he is praised and celebrated for inventing the math that allows these nonsensical beliefs. And here's another article from a physics website that asks again why we can't feel the spin of the Earth, and here's their answer. So why can't we all feel it? The answer lies in the nature of Earth's movement. Think of being on an aeroplane with it smoothly traveling at a constant speed and constant altitude. You've unbuckled your seatbelt to go on a walk down the aisle, but you can't feel the movement of the plane. The reason is simple. You, the plane, and everything inside it is all traveling at the same speed. In order to perceive the movement on the plane, you have to glance at the clouds outside. Again, remember what we talked about earlier? This plane has a roof, and that's why it's able to be moved with everything inside it at the same speed. But we'll get to that in a second. It says it's the same with the Earth's rotation, except for the fact that the Earth has no lid. It has no ceiling to the plane. Our planet completes a full turn around its axis every 23 hours, 56 minutes, spinning incessantly at an almost entirely constant rate. Notice again, it's not constant, and that's why they have to say spinning at an almost entirely constant, even though they tell us that the reason we can't feel the spin of the Earth is because it's moving at a constant speed. Here, not entirely constant. One way to feel motion is to feel wind on your face, but remember that the Earth's atmosphere is traveling with us at the same speed. Do you see the deception yet? Do you see how easy it is to just say, oh, well, everything's moving at the same speed, therefore it's the same as us traveling inside of a plane, when it's completely and totally different. A little bit further down it says, so why does Earth spin so constantly? Because there's nothing stopping it. And now you understand why there has to be a vacuum of space, why it has to be a vacuum, because the Earth has to spin through it and has nothing stop it. Again, the easy answer is we don't spin. Do people understand that yet? It gets rid of all the other assumptions. Again, when our solar system formed out of a collapsing dust cloud and spun out into a flattened accretion disk with a bulge in the middle, all the planets inherited that rotation. Again, we've always been spinning. We've always been flying. That's why we can't feel it. What an easy way out for science and mathematics. And yet again, they return to the airplane example, even though this has nothing to do with how we live on Earth. We are told men can take a space shuttle or rocket out to space. Can we shoot a rocket to space from inside a passenger jet? Of course not. It's contained. It has walls and a floor and a ceiling. But on spaceship Earth, where are the walls? Where is the ceiling? And the other problem that arises, and you can see it discussed at length here at Stack Exchange because it disrupts everything that we are told, is why is it easier to walk from the front of a plane to the back and more difficult to walk from the back to the front? Anyone who has ever been on a train will tell you that. But look at all the fighting and name-calling and equations these guys fall over. Why? Because if it were true that we traveling on Earth is the same as a plane, then there should be no difference in the direction you walk on the plane or train. But there is. And so like the plane, it should be easier for us to walk west than east. When an Olympic athlete runs a 100-meter dash or participates in a long jump competition, they should all request to face west. You'd get a faster speed and a longer jump, but you don't. Why? Well, because the Earth does not spin, and it does not move. Period. Now, you can use some made-up math if you want. You can believe the equations of men and simply trust and believe in them. That's always safe. In my opinion, the answer to the question, do we spin, is actually quite easy. The answer is no. That's my opinion. You are free to yours. Links to all the articles discussed are in the description, and I invite you to do your own research because if you do, you'll never again believe what you were taught. Please donate to this channel if you can. I need and appreciate all the support to keep this channel going. This has been Jeranism, and until next time.